All right, Algebra 2 students, here we go, round 2. So for this part, we are going to be writing the equations of the graphs that you had already seen in video 1. Now, reminder as you go through that we are going to be writing equations of sine and cosine curves. So sine curves typically start in the middle. They go middle, high, middle, low, middle. Now, of course, these are cyclical, so they keep going forever and ever, but that is how we identify if it's going to be a sine or a cosine. So for the cosine curves, they typically start high. They go high, middle, low, middle, high. And again, they are cyclical. So they would start going back down for each piece. Now this is the, kind of a basic sine and cosine curve. Okay. And they can be inverted upside down, which will cause our A value to become negative. All right, so let's take a look. Problem 1, you already completed. And basically, this function right here, this is a sine, and this graph was from a video that you watched last week, but this is definitely going to be a sine function because sine begins in the middle. Remember, we just talked about that. It goes middle, high, middle, low, middle. So we already identified the amplitude, the period, the b value. There's no phase shift and there's no vertical shift. So that leaves us with our equation that we want to write as we go through. So since our a value is 1, we'll put that in there. This is a sine function. We discussed that. Our b value is 1, so we'll put that in there. There is not a horizontal phase shift, so we'll leave that alone, and there is not a vertical phase shift, so we'll leave that alone. You can also rewrite this without the 1s, so sine of x. So you can also write it like this. Okay, moving on to problem 2. So problem 2, this is starting up high, high, middle, low, middle, high. And so therefore, this is going to be a cosine graph, okay? So again, we've already identified our different values from video 1. Our amplitude is 1, so we'll put a 1 there. We have cosine, because this can be a cosine or a sine right here. So 1 cosine, our b value is 1. And our phase shift, there isn't 1. And our vertical shift, there isn't 1 either. So we'll just leave it like this. So this is the same as writing y equals cosine of x. All right, so those mean the same exact thing. Equation 3. All right, so equation 3, we've got a couple things going on here. This was a little bit different. First off, if we take a look at it, this function right here is starting in the middle. We are starting in the middle right here and going middle, high, middle, low, middle. All right. Hi, Miss Vay, sending me a message. So middle, high, middle, low, middle, which means that this is going to be a sine function. Okay, so this is going to be a sine function, but we have a couple things that is different from the sine function that we saw in problem 1. So this one does not have an amplitude of 1. This one has a vertical shift, so it's not 0 this time. And we have our horizontal center that was shifted, which tells us that we have a vertical shift as well. So we already discussed those bits and pieces in the previous video. So our amplitude is 4, so I'm going to put that in. We have sine. Our b is 1 again. Our horizontal shift, there isn't 1, so c is 0. And our vertical shift is down 2, so minus 2. So the only change that you might make is to get rid of the 1. So 4 sine of x minus 2. Dunsies. Okay. equation 4. Okay, so what's different about this one? So first we want to decide, is it a sine or a cosine? And you can see that I already highlighted the pieces that we were looking at. So this starting in the middle, which means it's a sine again. Okay, so this is a sine graph. So what is different about it is the period is not 2 pi. And we discussed this in the previous video. So we're going to plug our amplitude in. Let me change that back to black and be consistent. So change that to, there's 4. Sine, our B is now a 4. Our horizontal shift, none again. Our vertical shift, none again. So this is it. And that's your equation right there. I added another problem for this one. So this is problem number 5. So at this time, what I'd like you to do is pause and see if you can try to find all the different key characteristics of this. Unpause me when you're done. Okay, so hopefully you got all of the same things that I have here. Our amplitude is 3, so we are looking at from the horizontal center or midline, we are looking at how tall this is. So this is telling us that our A value is 3. So our amplitude is 3. Now the difference is that if we take a look at the function, so this is starting low, not high, but it's not in the middle either. So this is a cosine curve, but it's inverted. So we have a not sine, Miss Taz. We have a cosine curve here. Let me write in it instead. Boom. There you go, Miss Taz. So we have a cosine curve that's going on here. We have a couple other different things that are happening. It is inverted over the x-axis, which is going to mean that our A value is actually 3, or negative 3. Our A value is actually negative 3. So our amplitude is going to be negative 3. Sorry, our A is negative 3. Cosine, if you did the math going through here for your period, you really don't have to really do all the algebra, because once you set up the equation, you can see that B has to be just 3. So B is 3. No horizontal shift again. You'll see some later in the practice just for challenge. And then this is moving up 1, so plus 1. So the C, there isn't one. D, there is one. And this would be your final equation, having that negative in there. With that said, I have been showing you graphs that have a beginning point and an end point. We know that doesn't really happen with sine and cosine curves. Technically, there's an infinite number of equations that you could give. And if we were in real class, I would be having you find a few different equations. If you try the challenge or take a look at the 3rd video at the bottom, the other person that I put in there kind of goes through how you can find the different equations. But that is it for now. Go ahead and do your try it problems. Have a great day. Hope to see you soon in Not Your Circles. Bye-bye.